Chapter 331. Genuine Antidote. Feng Lianying's mouth gaped open, her heart filling with resentment. Just as she was going to say something more, Feng Yunjing's next words made her tremble, and she no longer dared to act recklessly. If you dare tarnish the reputation of the Feng family again, I'll send you to the ancestral temple of the Feng family, and you can never think of coming out. Going to the Feng family's ancestral temple meant that her name would be removed from the Feng family records. From then on, her life would be over, and she could no longer appear on Miluo continent. That, for Feng Lianying, who was filled with pride and a thirst for power, was simply a fate worse than death. On the other hand, when Hushi heard the inquiries from Qinglong and the others, the hint of a smile flashed in her eyes. She didn't answer, but instead took out a spiritual supplement pill. Next, she walked over to the spreading pool of squirming blood and dropped the pill on it. Everyone was puzzled and couldn't help but gather closer. Soon, something shocking to everyone occurred. The blood that was originally only the size of 2 palms suddenly made a pfff noise after the spiritual supplement pill was thrown into it. Then, the area of blood grew bigger and bigger, while the speed it was squirming at rapidly increased. The way that the blood struggled and pulsed was like a blood demon coming to life. While that spiritual supplement pill, at this time, had been entirely swallowed up. Everyone's mouths opened wide, astonishment showing clearly on their faces. Gu Lufeng murmured, "This poison can become stronger by swallowing spiritual power? So that's the reason you eliminated the spiritual power within the spiritual herb and in my uncle first?" Hushi nodded, unhurriedly answering, "Purple monkey flower, pomegranate fire fruit, and dragon grass are indeed the nemesis of this poison. However, the rich spiritual power contained within these herbs is actually the greatest source of nourishment to this poison. Which means the herbs that were originally ready to detoxify the poison not only didn't work, but instead made the poison absorb the spiritual power and become stronger." In fact, Hushi had read about it in the overflowing cauldron pill scripture, that this poison was indeed the blood-intoxicated poison, and that purple monkey flower, pomegranate fire fruit, and dragon grass were the antidote. However, because the way to make blood-intoxicated poison had long been lost from Miluo continent for so many years, many people were unaware of the real character of this poison, that spiritual power was its food. Feng Lianying thought that she knew the nemesis of blood-intoxicated poison and how to detoxify it, but little did she know the correct way to cure the poison. In addition to it requiring purple monkey flower, pomegranate fire fruit, and dragon grass, the most important part was that all the spiritual power within the herbs and the patient had been expelled. For a long time now, spiritual power was a nemesis to all poisons. In general, as long as the spiritual power was strong enough, it could easily resist the erosion of all types of poison. However, for blood-intoxicated poison, it was the opposite. Spiritual power was instead its most vital nourishment. It's no wonder that Feng Lianying took it for granted that the 5 elements blood coagulation pill would be able to help. As for why some of the herbs in the medicinal field can be consumed, and some of them are poisonous, Hushi smiled leisurely before she indifferently said, "I can only tell you that I'm able to distinguish them one by one, which herbs in this field are poisoned, and which ones are normal. But as for the method to differentiate them, forgive me, but I can't tell you that." The fact is that she didn't really know how to explain because it was a kind of intuition she'd gained after dealing with poisons for many years. She only needs to smell them and see them, and she could tell right away whether or not the things in front of her were poisonous. Although Hushi's explanation was anything but detailed, it was still much clearer than Feng Lianying's. Those people who were still worried about Gu Yidao, suffering from residual effects, now no longer had any doubts. Chapter 332. Disobedient and unfilial. This youngster before them was only about 15 to 16 years old with a cultivation base at foundation establishment stage, but no one expected that his medical skills would be so formidable. The crowd was in a daze at first before they suddenly returned to their senses. Then, all of them suddenly rushed to her and kowtowed before her. "Godly doctor, a person as great as yourself would, of course, forgive such offenses committed by us lowly people, right? Please save us." That's right. Saving our lives will be a most meritorious deed. Please be merciful and give us a cure." Watching those shameless people now begging Hushi, Wu Yu waved his fan as he sneered. My, I wonder who was it that just finished insulting my young master, and said that he was a quack who would kill people? And who was it that said my young master wasn't even worthy of carrying Ice Lotus Fairy's shoes, and saying that they mustn't let him leave the medicinal field alive? Now that you know that my young master is extremely skilled, you turn to him to seek help from him to save you. I wonder how many faces you all have? Everyone was so ashamed, to the point that their faces were filled with resentment. Wu Yu's words were obviously too relentless, making them all lose face. However, as they felt the poison within them flare up once more, their little lives flashed before their eyes. How could they still consider their reputations? They didn't respond to Wu Yu's words, and instead kept incessantly weeping for help with faces filled with snot and tears. At this time, a man covered in blood and on his last breaths suddenly crawled out from the crowd. He didn't crawl towards Hushi as everyone else did. Rather, he crawled to Gu Lufeng and tugged at his clothes as he hoarsely said, "Lufeng, you're Murong Lufeng, right?" Gu Lufeng looked down at him. Although the person before him was completely different, he recognized his identity at a glance. He was the head of the Murong family, Murong Zhangfeng. Gu Lufeng narrowed his eyes, and suddenly, a blade appeared in his hand, and he quickly cut off the corner of his clothes that was being pulled by Murong Zhangfeng. Then, he coldly asked, "Who are you? Do I know you? Don't pretend. I heard all your conversations with Gu Yidao." Although Murong Zhangfeng had tried to lower his voice as much as possible, his extreme anger still made his voice sharper. "You're a disobedient and unfilial bastard. Obviously, you're offspring of the Murong family. Yet these past few years you've actually been colluding with strangers to attack Murong family's medicinal hall. You bastard, Murong Feng is your father. The Murong family is also a place where you were born and raised, but you actually dare to bite the hand that feeds you. Don't you fear retribution for what you've done?" Gu Liufeng's face was covered with a mask, so the only things visible were his cold eyes and the slight smirk hanging on a corner of his mouth. "You people from the Murong family are devoid of consciences and unafraid of retribution for your bad deeds. So, why would I be afraid? You dash. You are indeed Murong Lufeng. You bastard." Murong Zhangfeng was so enraged that he suddenly raised his voice and continuously bellowed, "You're the same as that shameless mother of yours, nothing but cruel and unscrupulous. We of the Murong family raised you for nothing." Murong Zhangfeng's curses were said in such rage that the speed of the poison in his body became faster because of his emotions, causing him acute pain that made his anger be quickly replaced by fear. He looked up and saw Gu Lufeng slightly lowering his head until he couldn't see his expression. He was embarrassed and ashamed of cursing, so he quickly said, "I can overlook these small matters. Now, quickly get me the antidote from that kid. When I return to the Murong family, I'll ask for you to be dealt with leniently." Chapter 333. For what reason? Everyone in the crowd around Hushi, because of Murong Zhangfeng's yelling, were all focusing on Gu Lufeng. Hushi sauntered towards Gu Lufeng, glanced at Murong Zhangfeng, then whispered, "What's going on?" As soon as she'd finished asking, she noticed that his body was trembling slightly and his hands hanging by his sides were clenched into fists. It was clear that he'd reached an extreme level of anger. And when Murong Zhangfeng saw Hushi, surprise flashed on his face before he shouted, "Genius Dr. Shi, I'm the head of the Murong family. Murong Zhangfeng, give me the antidote, and as long as you save me, my older brother and my Murong family will owe you our thanks. I believe in that in Yinjing City you must have heard the name of my Murong family, right?" Hushi sneered and arrogantly looked at him. Her eyes were full of contempt. "Who are you?" The disdain and contempt in her voice were clear. The people who heard it couldn't help but snigger. Murong Zhangfeng, however, was so angered that the flesh on his face trembled. But even so, when he remembered that his own little life was in the grip of the other party's hands, he didn't dare act rashly and suppressed his anger. I'm not just the head of the Murong family, but also Murong Liufeng's paternal uncle. You just saved Murong Liufeng's maternal uncle, so why don't you save me too?" "Murong Lufeng?" Hushi raised her brows. and then looked at Gu Lufeng. She saw him looking at Murong Zhangfeng and Murong Hai, who was unconscious, with a gaze as cold as a blade. That gaze was like he was going to dismember their bodies. The crowd who'd been begging suddenly started gossiping. Isn't the man who's wearing the mask young Master Gu, the owner of Shengda Hall, Gu Lufeng? Why did the head of the Murong family call him Murong Lufeng? Is he a member of the Murong family? But I'd heard that Shengda Hall was suppressing the Murong family, even seizing half of the Murong family's market in the city outside of Yanjing City. If Gu Lufeng is a member of the Murong family, then isn't he too disobedient and unfilial? Everyone looked at Gu Lufeng with gazes filled with questions and anger. However, Murong Zhangfeng had started rejoicing in his heart, as this was the perfect opportunity to take advantage of the situation, because unfortunately, the poison in his body was getting stronger and stronger. While Murong Hai, who was lying beside him, was now barely even breathing. Murong Zhangfeng quickly yelled at Gu Lufeng, "Murong Lufeng, you still haven't gotten genius Dr. Shi to give me the antidote." "Give you the antidote?" Gu Lufeng, who'd been silent all this time, finally began to speak. His voice was full of bitter resentment and sarcasm. "Murong Zhangfeng, you want me to save you? For what reason? Is it based on the matter of you treating my mother and I worse than dogs?" As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand to take down his mask. In the next moment, everyone exclaimed and sucked in sharp gasps. Appearing in front of them was an ambiguous face. It was incomparably handsome, and yet it was also gorgeous. Unfortunately, as it happened, there was a long, ghastly scar running from his brow to just under his right ear. This scar was blood red and was like a centipede crawling on his face. It was a vivid contrast to his slightly pale skin. His initially handsome face had been transformed into one of a horrible monster due to the scar. Although it was only a single scar, with the hatred reflected in Gu Liufeng's eyes and Murong Zhangfeng's eyes that avoided looking at the scar, everyone could easily tell that the Murong family must have treated Gu Lufeng and his mother exceptionally poorly. Chapter 334. Thank you. Murong Zhangfeng's guilty conscience was soon taken over by his heartlessness and selfishness. "You unworthy offspring. Your mother was nothing more than a concubine, and you are nothing more but a bastard. We raised you, and only occasionally hit you. Is disciplining and scrupulous children unnatural? If you know what's good for you, then give me the antidote. If not, when I go back, I will remove you from the Murong family records. From then, your only option is to die and become a lonely ghost." Gu Lufeng burst out laughing. Then he coldly stared at Murong Zhangfeng. "What I regret most about my birth was that I was born in the Murong family. If you can remove me from the Murong family, then I will have to thank you. Unfortunately, to return to Murong family, you must live past today, and this matter is easier said than done. I won't kill you. I just don't wish for you to die an easy death. I want you to experience a slow and painful death filled with despair. Compared to death by a knife, this will be far more interesting." Murong Zhangfeng trembled when he met Gu Liufeng's gaze. At this moment, he no longer wished for Gu Lufeng to save him. His only option is to look towards Hushi. Repeatedly kowtowing, he said, "Genius Dr. Shi, please pay no mind to that unscrupulous brute's nonsense. As long as you save my life, Murong family will give you 3 finished properties." Hushi faintly smiled and suddenly pulled a bottle of the antidote out of her sleeves. Murong Zhangfeng's face was wild with joy as he stared at the bottle. He believed that Hushi had finally been persuaded by him. However, Hushi turned around and threw the antidote to Gu Lufeng. Lightly laughing, she said, "The bottle contains herbal medicine and intoxicated blood. When they are mixed together, the reaction is very interesting. If you wish to see him suffer more, then sprinkle some on him." You guys. Murong Zhangfeng didn't expect to die. His whole heart was once full of expectation, but this has become the result. Taking the medicine bottle, Gu Liufeng's face, which looked fierce due to the scar, held a somewhat heartfelt smiling expression. He slowly stepped forward, and before Murong Zhangfeng could slander him again, he had already sprinkled the medicine on him, and the unconscious Murong Hai's body's the only sound was, "Ah!" The cry broke through the heavens, and everyone present at the scene's eardrums rung. Subsequently, Murong Zhangfeng and the originally unconscious Morong Hai were both painfully rolling around the floor. The pair of them were incessantly wailing as thin black blood oozed out of their bodies. The grief-filled howls continued on for the length of time it takes to burn a stick of incense. The black blood consumed both men's bodies, completely melting them. Gu Lufeng slowly took the bottle of medicine and poured some intoxicated blood on the thin blood. Soon after, the blood made zzz sounds before evaporating and completely disappearing. His fierce-looking face carried an expression of both grief and hate that couldn't be dismissed. When he turned around and faced a young youth with matchless beauty and clear, black eyes, Gu Lufeng suddenly felt as if the stone, which had been weighing in his heart for many years, had been moved just a tiny bit. He walked forward a few steps, gazing deeply at Hushi, saying, "Hushi, thank you." Hushi raised her hand up, interrupting him. "Wasn't it you that said friends do not have to thank each other?" Gu Lufeng stared blankly, his long eyelashes faintly trembling. The bright red scar on his face caused his expression to look more fierce, but his mouth held a shallow, gentle smile. Chapter 335 Profiting from One's Misfortunes. After everyone saw for themselves the miserable death Morong Zhangfeng and Morong Hai suffered, they all immediately thought about the poison on their body breaking out at any time. Who dared to still hesitate? Like a swarm of bees, everyone turned to run towards Hushi, begging her to save their lives. To tell you the truth, Hushi had no mercy in her heart for these people. Looking at the group of people miserably crying for help, the idea of delivering all living creatures from suffering came to mind during this moment. Hushi remained unmoved, coldly saying, "If you want us to save you, that can be done. However, I, Dr. Shi, want to continue treating the way I was doing so previously. The people who look pleasing to the eye may receive treatment for free. But for the people who aren't pleasing to the eye, even if you offered 10 million in gold, I still may not treat you. And if you guys still wish for me to save you, this is doable. So long as you guys are able to take out an object which meets my eye, such as a pill or rare treasure. One treasure in exchange for one life. If not, then don't speak." Immediately after Hushi said these words, everyone looked at each other in dismay, and nobody made a sound for a long time. After a while, somebody couldn't help themselves and lowly said a sentence. "Isn't it a doctor's job to save people? How? How can you act so snobbish?" Hushi looked unhurried as Wu Yu already stepped forward, while waving a fan, and sneered, "Ice Lotus Fairy isn't snobbish. She's willing to treat you guys for free. Why don't you go ask her to treat you then?" Once these words were spoken, everyone's complexions immediately paled and nobody dared to speak anymore. Just then, the Ice Lotus Fairy really did agree to treat everybody free of charge, but what was the result? They saw the two bodies explode, becoming a puddle of blood, and that malicious fairy, even if she did not require payment, only gave the medicine to the people with riches and power. Compared to requiring payment, how is this any different? At one, however, this straightforward youth in front of their eyes may be a better option. Hushi felt disinclined to stay with these grumbling people. Directly towards Wu Yu, she said, "This matter will be handed over to you. You will get a fraction of the gains. These trivial matters, young master, she has given this humble one to do." Not waiting for Hushi to finish speaking, Wu Yu's eyes already brightened up and excitedly said, "As long as you let me try some more of your delicious food, I wouldn't even hesitate to go through water and tread on fire." 2. Hushi's face twitched. She felt as if this Wu Yu didn't deserve the title of a glutton. He threw away all integrity just to eat something. 3. Able to get Hushi's nod of approval, Wu Yu immediately felt very excited. In order to extort those pitiful people, he wouldn't leave any hands out. 4. With Shang De Hall's Master Gu Liufeng's added help, both men were ruthless, causing the group of people to quickly become angry. Truth to be told, if my level 3 pills were exchanged for crystals, it would be several 100,000. Yet this was still not enough to invite several doctors. You still can't hate enough? Acting like you guys, who are profiting from someone's misfortune, really can't saving people. Where is the doctor? Isn't it just made up of purple monkey flower, pomegranate fire fruit, and dragon grass, which is then baked with spiritual energy? This old man, is also a level 2 doctor. I don't believe that I can't do it too. Wu Yu and Gu Lufeng watched as everyone ran into the medicinal field to find herbs for medicine while shouting curses. The pair of them weren't even worried in the slightest. On the contrary, they took joy in the calamity. The group of people believed that just by knowing the prescription, they would be able to imitate Hushi's detoxification method. Soon, they will realize how stupid they are. But some people couldn't stand the intoxicated blood poison, fearful of the pain it brought. Unable to bear it any longer, they finally took out a treasure that they had obtained from the secret territory to exchange. This is the level 5 magical beast inner pill I obtained from Huang Imo territory. In order to get this level 5 inner pill, I nearly got eaten by the magical beast. Originally the plan was to use this inner pill in order to advance a level. Now my life is quickly slipping away. What talk of advancing a level? This inner pill is for you. Quickly give me the antidote. 1. Compared to requiring payment, how is this any different? The Ice Lotus Fairy is essentially only picking the people who would be able to help her in the future. 2. I wouldn't even hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. Not afraid of any difficulty. Wu Yu would be happy to do just about anything for another bite of Hushi's food. 3. She felt as if this Wu Yu didn't deserve the title of a glutton. He threw away all integrity just to eat something. I feel like the author means that the title of glutton isn't enough to describe how much Wu Yu would do for food. 4. He wouldn't leave any hands out. Wu Yu will expend all of his energy into this. He'll give it his all. Chapter 336 Vial Thoughts. Wu Yu accepted the inner pill and checked it over. Suddenly beaming with joy, he handed over a bottle of Hushi's boiled medicinal juice. Remember to clear your body of spiritual power before taking it. No longer daring to tarry, the youth emptied his body of all spiritual power. Soon after, he quickly drank the antidote. Right after he drank the antidote, severe pain began to spread. The pain caused him to repeatedly howl, rolling around on the floor. But before half an hour even passed, the pain began to gradually reside and the pus on his body also completely disappeared. Even the wound began to rapidly heal. He felt his spiritual power return to his dantian one, and the burning pain in his internal organs faded away. The youth couldn't help but laugh. Facing Hushi, he dropped to his knees with his hands clasped. His face still held some of his previous unwillingness. Thank you, genius doctor, for saving my life. Compared to one's own life, any medicinal pill isn't important when you don't have a life to live anymore. At this moment, the people who entered the medicinal field to collect herbal medicine in order to imitate Hushi's refining method to make the boiled medicinal juice shockingly discovered that the moment their spiritual energy touched the originally green herbal medicine, it would immediately turn into ashes. It was much harder to accomplish than Hushi's effortless demonstration suggested. Now, everybody had no other way out. Additionally, people were already able to obtain the antidote after exchanging their treasure. Who dared to still hesitate? One after another, they took out their treasures to exchange with Hushi. From far away, Feng Lian clenched her fists. She watched Hushi's stars gathering around the moon appearance, too, and bit down on her teeth until they made GG sounds. Suddenly, she heard the sound of clunking, and her well-taken care of little finger's fingernail broke in half as she felt a burst of pain. Why have I been beaten by such a low-lying waste? How many years have I spent cultivating? My teacher is the master of Thousand Poison Valley. My hard-earned reputation suddenly brought upon this result. I don't accept this. I'm not reconciled. Heaven is unfair. I must make that slut pay the price. Feng Lianying's voice was coarse, completely opposite to her usual sweet and dainty sound, and her whole face was even more terrifying. Nie Jinshin worriedly supported her, softly saying, Lian Ing Mei Mei 3. Don't be angry. It's bad for your body to be angry over trash. Nie Jinshin didn't even get to finish speaking before Feng Lianing swung her hand up and ruthlessly slapped his face. Shrieking, Get lost. Who do you think you are? Who let you touch me? Don't think I know your vile thoughts towards me. You only covet my status and good looks. Pa, I don't even dare look at what status you have. Merely someone with no family background, just a disciple of Luli sect. Are you worthy of me? Can you match up with Big Brother you? Get lost. Go far away. Putting a hand over his face, Nie Jinshan was in disbelief. His face got scratched by Feng Lianying's fingernails, leaving traces of blood. To the side, disciples of the Luli sect watched the pair. His expression was full of pity and joy over another person's calamity. All the admiration and ties of friendship in his heart transformed into embarrassment and hate. Nie Jinshan bowed his head, tightly clenching his fist. He didn't utter another word. The brightness in his eyes dulled a bit. Feng Yunjing saw the whole moment between Feng Lianying and Nie Jinshan and coldly laughed. Silly woman, simply wasted Feng family's cultivation from these past few years. 1. Dantian. The Dantian is where one's chi resides. It's located 2 points below the navel. 2. Stars gathering around the moon appearance. Everyone embraces or surrounds one thing. 3. Mei Mei, younger sister. Chapter 337. It's better to go back with me. If she wasn't the Thousand Poison Valley's master's favorite disciple, then he would have long tossed aside this woman who lost face for Feng family. As expected, children of concubines really didn't deserve to be in the public view. Feng Yunjing lightly swung his arms and lowly spoke to a trusted confidant on the side. Looks like this grassland doesn't have the stuff we need. Prepare to leave here immediately. Yes, young master. The trusted confidant answered, bowing. However, looking to the side at the Luli sect disciples who had been knocked unconscious by the intoxicated blood poison, he couldn't help but ask, young master, what do we do with these 2 people? Originally, the Luli sect disciples stayed far away and nobody got infected. But unfortunately, Feng Lianying allowed Shangguan Rue to take the 5 elements blood coagulation pill. As a result, Shangguan Rue exploded in front of everyone, and 2 of Luli sect's disciples who were caught off guard were touched by a little bit of the pus. Sure enough, they got infected as well. Feng Yunjin's eyes were ice cold, lacking any emotions. Leave them here to die on their own. Suddenly his heart moved. He consciously checked, looking towards his treasured Hushi. The youth was like a painting. The skin was the color of snow. Their eyes were full of bright stars. The bright red lips were lifted on either corner. The youth had unparalleled seductiveness. As Feng Yunjin's eyes looked on, he suddenly turned to walk towards the youth. Right at this moment, Hushi was also checking over the treasure Wu Yu and Gu Lufeng were handing over. Every speck was the same. Her heart blossomed with joy. These indeed were level 5 magical beast inner pills. Previously, she worked extremely hard but was only able to obtain 2 of these. This time, she's able to replenish Dan and the little golden dragon again. Furthermore, 1 dozen level 4 books which could be used to save the lives of groups people. Really couldn't be better. Unexpectedly, there was also a flying skill book which was able to increase speed. Clicking her tongue, there definitely wasn't a price for this on the market. While Hushi's face remained calm and collected on the outside, she had long gotten extremely excited in her heart over the prospect of earning money. Taking the next box, Hushi was just about to open it when suddenly she felt her eyes darken and she was enveloped in a shadow. Very quickly, she heard Feng Yunjing's icy voice, Hushi, 2 of my Luli sect's disciples were infected with intoxicated blood poison. So, Hushi raised her head up, looking at him and coldly asked. Standing very close, Feng Yunjing could take the youth. Or he ought to say the young girl's clear and neat face was pleasing to the eyes. He couldn't help but smile deviously. It would be better to go back with me. If you're able to treat my subordinates, your ability could also be used by my Feng family. Saying this, Feng Yunjing slowly stooped down. His hot breath came out as he controlled the desire to slowly spit in Hushi's face. You can rest assured, I won't treat you unfairly. Whatever Nangong Yu gives you, I can also give. Furthermore, I can give even more. How about it? Hushi, who had been sluggish for half the day, suddenly reacted as if she heard a joke, rubbing her ears. Excuse me? This Feng Yunjing and Feng Lianying just a moment ago wanted to join together and kill her. Suddenly, he now want her to come back with him to Feng family and still asks her how about it? Is this person experiencing a mental breakdown? Or has their brain short-circuited? But before Hushi could say anything, a pair of black shadows wielding swords came down from the sky, ruthlessly chopping towards Feng Yunjing with killing intent. Feng Yunjing already had his guard up and began rapidly retreating. But he also sacrificed his magic weapon before he was able to even consider avoiding two, who seemed to attack with the intent to destroy the earth. Boom! The earth shook as lightning came down. Chapter 338 Give It to Me. Slowly flashing, Nangong Yu's figure was like a fantasy, arriving to stand beside Hushi. He extended his hand out to take Hushi's hand, drawing her closer to his chest. His cold gaze stared towards the nearby Feng Yunjing, saying, "Feng Yunjing, don't let me remind you a third time. Sheer is mine. Don't try and lay a hand on her again, or don't blame me for not being polite." Feng Yunjing's face didn't hold a lot of anger, but it did have coldness and disdain. "Nangong Yu, even though your Hell King Manor's reputation is considered impressive, but my Feng family's prestige is impressive too. Good poultry chooses wood. And one. I trust that genius Dr. She knows which option is the best one to choose." The burst of electricity, although short, was able to attract everybody's attention. At this moment, just as Feng Yunjing said these words, everybody turned pale with fright. Looking southward, Nangong Yu waited and watched as the absent-mindedness in everyone's eyes turned to restrained fear and respect. Hell King. This is the famously brilliant His Highness Hell King. At the mere age of 15, he was able to become a gold core and become the Luo continent's #1 genius. Using his own strength, he was able single-handedly to fight against the magical beast's troops. He was able to save Jinling country from downfall, that His Highness Hell King. Not only that, he is also cruel and cold-blooded. With his Xian Yuan sword, he slaughtered thousands of lives, completely dyeing the soil on Guijin mountain range red. He is the Lord of the Netherworld. Feng Yunjing seemed to have not saw everyone's shocked expressions. Looking at Nangong Yu with a sneer, he slowly said, "Not to mention, you are the famous His Highness Hell King. With your prestige, you could get any beautiful girl you wanted. Why are you so stingy, holding on to a girl who's merely at foundation establishment stage? How about this, you give Shiyu to me. I promise that later on, 1/10 of the medicinal pills Feng family produces each year will gift to you. How's that?" Everyone, having heard this, all simultaneously let out a sigh of relief. This was Feng family's yearly production of medicinal pills. Saying these pills are priceless still wouldn't be considered too much. Who didn't know that Feng family had a Grand Master level refining pharmacist? In the entirety of Luo continent, the amount of Grand Master level refining pharmacists were like feathers of a phoenix. 2. Each year, only 12 medicinal pills were produced and sold. Each of these medicinal pills were priceless and couldn't be bought with money. Everyone couldn't help but look towards Hell King. In their minds, although the foundation establishment stage youngster was a natural talent and had some skills, how could he compare to Feng family's medicinal pills? They thought, as long as Hell King's brain hadn't malfunctioned, he wouldn't refuse. However, Nangong Yu's expression was extremely chilly. He seemed extremely angry, comparable to a gunpowder barrel which was ready to burst at any given time. He looked coldly at Feng Yunjing, slowly raising the black sword he was holding in his hand. The sword's killing intent sent a shiver up everyone's spines. "Feng Yunjing, if you wish to court death, then I don't mind helping you." Feng Yunjing narrowed his eyes and swept them over Nangong Yu and Hushi. Faintly smiling, he said, "This was merely a suggestion. Nangong, even if you don't agree, you don't have to get so angry. You can go back and think this over. The promises I made today are forever valid. If you change your mind, you can find me at any time." Finished speaking, he looked towards Hushi and the blazing light in his eyes flashed away. "Shiyu, Feng family's doors are always open for you. You can also come find me at any time." Finished speaking, he threw out a dark red wooden tablet before turning around to leave without stopping. 1. Good poultry chooses wood has a similar idea to a talented person chooses a patron of integrity, or a fine bird chooses the best tree to nest in. 2. Feathers of a phoenix, metaphor for precious and rare things. Chapter 339. Plan ahead. Hashi picked up the wooden tablet, turning it around in her hands to look at the entire thing. This was actually the token to Feng family's outer door, and its level was quite high too. Non-inner core disciples aren't allowed to block it. Not bad. This really was going to the Feng family to kill someone for his property. An indispensable move, ah? Hashi beamed, storing the command tablet in her space. Seeing this, Nangongyu couldn't help it, and his expression became extremely ugly. He took Hashi into his embrace, coldly surveying her. He said, "Sheer, if you dare to leave me to go into another man's embrace, then I will." "I will? You will do what?" Hashi raised her eyebrow up. She happily looked up at him. "You'll kill me?" Nangongyu's breath stilled. He felt as if this person was both crafty and beautiful, allowing him to love and hate her. He wished he could marry her immediately, so he could shut her away and not allow anybody else to covet her. But the reasonable part of his mind told him, Sheer was different. He couldn't possibly lock her up for a lifetime and break her wings. She had her own world and wonderful life. Hashi saw his cold face trying to repress his emotions. He had the appearance that he would burst at any time. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Even if I wished to go into another man's embrace, I wouldn't choose to go to that mental case. Feng Yunjing, okay? You seem to think there's a hole in my brain and I would look for a tyrant, huh?" Saying this, she walked away and didn't bother him anymore. She minded her own business, continuing to open all the treasures Wu Yu had gotten. Nangongyu watched Hashi leave, but he didn't move for a long time. His eyes stayed at the site where Feng Yunjing and his subordinates left from. Qing Long stepped forward to the side. He softly said, "Master." Nangongyu's long eyelashes dropped down, hiding his stormy mood. Then with a slow and low voice he said, "Notify Wu Xian, prepare ahead." Qing Long was startled. His face betrayed his emotions. "Master?" This decision was related to Ming Wang Manor and Master's future. Master understated the decision. Was it because of the matter concerning Feng Yunjing? Or was it because of Wang Fei too? Qing Long wanted to say more, but when he saw Nangongyu's cold and indifferent expression, he swallowed his words. In any case, Master's command was their everything. They just have to follow it. "Yes, Master." Qing Long bowed. The indifference in his eyes slowly turned cold. Just for this day, Ming Wang Manor has already endured silently for long enough. During this time, the treasures collected by Wu Yu and Gu Lufeng was quite a lot. At one side, Hashi examined these treasures and then threw them into her space. Just thinking about the amount of yuan crystals she could get from these treasures, she became very happy. One night turned into a rich feeling. It truly was too refreshing. Genius Dr. Shi. Suddenly there was a male's hoarse voice sounding from above her head. Hashi lifted her head up to discover a middle-aged man who was about 30 years old. Although his cultivation base wasn't high, his body was intact, apparently unaffected by the intoxicated blood poison. The man's skin was very coarse and his hands were full of scars and calluses. His eyes were muddy and seemed to be filled full of sadness and hate, but they were also filled with helplessness. Meeting Hashi's gaze, he didn't have many words to say. Instead, he took a jade box from his arms and handed it to Hashi. "I heard them say Genius Doctor she was looking for Burning Heaven Realm's divine dragon fruit. I accidentally got this in Burning Heaven Realm. I hope Genius Doctor she won't ignore this." 1. To kill someone for his property. Idiom. Similar meaning to robbing someone. 2. Wang Fei, Princess. Chapter 340. What do you want me to do for you? Hashi blankly stared. Then suddenly she opened her eyes wide. For a split second, she thought she heard wrong. Divine dragon fruit? Although she did deliberately mention to Wu Yu that she was looking for the divine dragon fruit, she never thought she would be able to get it through this exchange. After all, the divine dragon fruit was extremely precious. The process of obtaining it is very challenging. Forget about even a few people being able to obtain it. But even if one does manage to obtain the fruit, with its high value, who would be stupid enough to trade it away? Hashi accepted the jade box and opened it. After taking one look at it, she already knew this really was the divine dragon fruit. This divine dragon fruit was little golden dragon's most needed spiritual fruit. It was the one which could heal him the most. Speaking to the middle-aged man, her tone was very mild. Do you have any relatives who need me to detoxify or save them? Bring me over to see them? Unexpectedly, the middle-aged man stood in the same spot he was originally. His face was filled with sadness and desperation, and after a while, he finally said, "No more. No more. There's already nobody left. It's too late." He suddenly turned around, pointing to a distant silhouette of a woman lying down. Then he pointed to the ground where the blood boiled, then disappeared. Distressed, he said, "Genius Dr. Shi, do you understand now? That is my wife and son. Just 1 hour before, they were still alive. Although my son was infected, he at the very least had the will to live." But Feng Yanling, it's all because of Feng Yanling, that malicious woman. Unexpectedly, she forced my son to eat the 5 elements blood coagulation pill, letting my son explode and die, becoming nothing but a puddle of blood. My wife was so angry, she went to argue. But she ended up being seriously injured by Luli Temple's people. I'm unwilling. I'm very unwilling. Clearly, our family is nothing more than insignificant warriors. And Luli sect, everybody minds their own business. For what reason did Feng Yanling not take our lives as lives? Why did she allow my family to fall apart? The family is bankrupt, and the people are dead. 1. The middle-aged man's voice was full of suffering and despair, breaking one's heart. Tears were flowing down his face. Hushi was silent for a long time, gently pinching the jade box. Lowering her voice, "You gifted me the divine dragon fruit, but what do you want me to do for you?" The man miserably shook his head. "After losing my wife and child, these material items no longer have any worth to me. My family passed on specific ways to make charms. My family stayed in Burning Heaven Realm for 7 days and 7 nights, ambushing people. With great difficulty, we were able to obtain this divine dragon fruit. The original hope was to improve my son's aptitude, giving him the ability to enter an influential sect to give him a more promising future. But now, it's all over. All finished. What use is this divine dragon fruit to me now?" The man's voice got heavier and heavier, filled with more and more sadness and hatred. He seemed to have lost all hope before slowly lowering his voice. "Genius Dr. Shi, if I was to say I had any hopes left, it would be that one day when you deal with that slut Feng Yanling. When you give Feng Yanling and Luli sect a tragic end. Let me watch this scene with my own eyes." Hushi raised her eyebrows up and noncommittally said, "How do you know that I will deal with Feng Yanling? And how do you know that I have the strength to bring Luli sect to a tragic end?" 1. The family is bankrupt and the people are dead, idiom. The man's family is ruined and he has nobody left. Chapter 341 White Hairs of Old Age. The middle-aged man's eyes had a glimpse of gloominess, slowly saying, "Just based on the fact that Genius Doctor Shi is able to cause Feng Lianying, a level 5 doctor, to lose face in front of everyone, as well as the fact that His Highness Hell King stands behind Genius Dr. Shi. I'm willing to gamble, so I'm going to gamble my desire for revenge on Genius Dr. Shi." The corner of Hushi's mouth curved a bit, weighing the jade box in her hand. Nodding her head, "Good, considering this divine dragon fruit, I promise you." The middle-aged man's face finally showed a slight smile. He took out a silver talisman from his arms and handed it over to Hushi, respectfully saying, "This is my personally prescribed 1,000-mile talisman. Even though it can only be used once, as long as you burn this talisman, then no matter what corner Genius Dr. Shi is at in the Miluo continent, I will be able to receive the message at any end of the earth." Hushi took the silver talisman, slightly swaying. She watched the middle-aged man stumbling back to his wife's side, mournfully crying as he carried her cold corpse. Suddenly, a pair of hands covered her eyes, blocking her line of sight. Nangong Yu's low and gentle voice sounded out, "Don't look anymore, Sheer and this king. We will definitely live together until we have white hairs of old age. There won't be a day where we're separated by life and death." Hushi took his show and turned around to glare at him. "Who will live together and have white hairs of old age with you? Don't you have your Feng Yanling Mimi? 1? Nangong Yu reached his hand out to pinch her nose. The expression on his face expressed both helplessness and pampering. Sheer, if you say this again, I'll take it as if you're jealous of me. Hushi slapped his hand. Her gaze landed on the jade box. She must immediately go back into her space to help little golden dragon absorb the spiritual power from the divine dragon fruit. But to be able to enter her space, she had to be asleep. Hushi grabbed at Nangong Yu's sleeves and softly said, "Lean your shoulder down." Not waiting for him to respond, she leaned her head against his shoulder, closed her eyes, and entered her space. At first, Nangong Yu stared blankly, but soon after, his mouth curved up into a gentle and sweet expression. He reached his hands out to bring the sleeping girl into his embrace. This girl must have been so busy these past few days, she must be so tired. But Hushi, who had entered her space, was shocked. In the entirety of her space, she couldn't spot Dandan's figure. She didn't even know where the purple abyss vine ran off to. It only left a small purple trunk in front of the spot Hushi was standing at. Hushi yelled for Dandan several times. However, she didn't receive any response. This scared Hushi so much, her complexion changed. It wasn't until purple abyss vine linked to her again that she let out a sigh of relief. Afterwards, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Her space created a screen. The screen showed a vast medicinal field. Inside the vast medicinal field there was a pink pig and the purple abyss vine happily traveling back. Having gotten their location, the pair immediately ate a green spiritual plant, completely devouring it. However, her space didn't have any high-level spiritual plants in it. But the strange thing was that when she was just recently outside, she didn't find any changes in the medicinal field. Through the help of the purple abyss vine, Hushi was able to establish a connection to her own small spoiled chowhound. Dandan, didn't you say there were terrifying things inside this medicinal field, causing you to be very afraid? Dandan was just eating to his heart's content, and when he heard Hushi's question, he couldn't answer truthfully. After a while, he was finally full and started giggling. Mimi, younger sister. In this situation, Feng Yanling is not his blood-related sister. Chapter 342, Eating While Packing Leftovers. Mother, the food here tastes good. Even though it's black and smelly, when I eat it, Dandan feels as if it tastes very good. The strength that bad woman destroyed is all back too. Black and smelly? Hushi was both astounded and worried. Dandan, are you sure you can eat these spiritual plants? What about the intoxicated blood poison? Dandan rolled around in the medicinal field, exposing his white round belly. Happily laughing, he said, "Mother is dumb. Because there is anti-purple abyss here, there's no possible way to be poisoned. The smelly and black items have been given to anti-purple abyss. The rest are all for Dandan. Awu. It's so delicious. Mother, do you want some too? Anti-purple abyss? These two, when did their relationship become so good? Moreover, why has he been calling purple abyss vine anti-purple abyss? Shouting ant towards a plant. Dandan, are you sure your logic is sound? Anti-purple abyss will quickly arrange a difficult fantasy array. We are here to eat. Together, Mother and that friendly older brother didn't even find out. And one. So while we were eating, we were also packing leftovers. Therefore, if we want to continue eating in your space, we can. Mother, is Dandan clever? Very good. Unexpectedly, he even knew about packing leftovers. He really is clever. At the same time, Hushi felt purple abyss vine's idea. Incomparably proud, the little purple abyss vine sat in her space swaying around as if expectantly awaiting Hushi's praise. Hushi's mouth twitched, but she looked at the high-level spiritual plant that got thrown into her space, going forward to touch purple abyss vine's trunk, encouraging it. The purple abyss vine suddenly began swaying more joyfully, adopting the appearance of an epileptic. Hushi swore that if the high-grade spiritual plant could talk, it would have been laughing uncontrollably by now. But after determining that these two wouldn't run into any problems, she let out a sigh of relief. In fact, the spiritual medicines in this 100-herb garden were truly real. But she didn't know why. For some reason, there were many spiritual plants in this garden. The levels of these magical plants weren't high, but they were very much like weeds. Their vitality was also extremely vigorous. After growing for a millennium, they covered nearly the entirety of the medicinal field. From the outside, the magical and spiritual plants looked the exact same. However, the magical plants would secrete a poison. For example, these specific magical plants would exude the intoxicated blood poison. And once a soldier died of poisoning from these plants, their body would rot into the soil and the spiritual energy would seep into the air, becoming the best nourishment for these magical plants. In fact, in the beginning, these magical plants weren't scary. Especially in the central plains of Miluo continent, one's chance of ever encountering these plants was exceptionally low. There also wasn't any soil to nourish the magical plants, to add on to the fact that these plants were a rare sight. As a result, so many high-level soldiers, including Feng Yunjing, didn't recognize these magical plants. However, Purple Abyss Vine was different. It was originally a level 5 magical plant, so these low-level magical plants were not only crushed because they contained a strong spiritual spirit, they also became Dandan and Purple Abyss Vine's food. Those genuine spiritual plants from the medicinal field were all thrown into her space by Dandan, so Hushi didn't bother with those two gluttonous individuals. She turned to look at the little golden dragon's current situation. At this moment, the little golden dragon was still fast asleep. Although the wounds on his body seemed to have healed, his whole spirit was still very poor. And Annie Purple Abyss will quickly arrange a difficult fantasy array. We are here to eat. Together, Mother and that friendly older brother didn't even find out. I'm not too sure what the author meant here. Apologies for this. Chapter 343 Real Identity. Hushi had seen the method to taking the divine dragon fruit in the All Living Things record. Very quickly, she used a pure fire spiritual power to extract juice from the divine dragon fruit. It dripped into the little golden dragon's mouth. Afterward, little golden dragon's body emitted light golden color. Its originally dim scales got a gloss to them. The little golden dragon struggled to open its eyes and saw the familiar figure. The figure emitted the sweet fragrance of grass and wood. Although the smell was weak, it let the little golden dragon feel as if this figure was trustworthy and dependable. It was truly strange. This was the formidable golden dragon, but he wanted to depend on a weak mortal girl. The little golden dragon's whole heart was heavy and quickly closed its eyes again. Its tail subconsciously curled around Hushi's wrist, brushing against her palm. Hushi let out a sigh of relief, glancing over the little golden dragon again to ensure that its injury was healed. Following that, she looked towards her hand, which was holding the divine dragon fruit that had already lost all its spiritual power and juice. All that was left was a layer of skin and the pit. But if she planted the pit in her space, would it sprout and grow more fruit? Hushi decided to indulge in her fantasies and took the divine dragon fruit's pit to plant in the ancient rhyme spirit field. She gave the little golden dragon more drops of spiritual spring water. Then, she left her space. When Hushi opened her eyes, she felt a male near her. Hushi's whole face turned red when she discovered that her whole body was nestled in Nangong Yu's embrace, and her head was resting on his stomach. She clearly only borrowed his shoulder to lean on. Hushi stood up straight and pushed herself out of Nangong Yu's hug. She heard his voice laced with regret saying, "Sheer, why don't you sleep a little longer? This king's shoulder is always open for you to lean on." Hushi grinded her teeth, preparing to slap Nangong Yu. But suddenly, a body began to rot, emitting a foul smell. A man from the crowd came out, running towards Hushi and throwing himself at her. Without needing Nangong Yu's command, Hell King Manor's bodyguards quickly came forward to block the man. However, the man refused to let this stop him, repeatedly crying. His hoarse voice rang out, "Shiyu, I know your real identity. I know who you are. As long as you save me, I'll tell you your true identity." Nangong Yu's eyebrows furrowed. The man's yelling caught a lot of the surrounding people's attention. He quickly covered them with a void spiritual barrier, keeping everyone's prying ears out. He looked at this man, whose face was completely covered in blood, making people unable to make out his true facial features. Then, he coldly said, Who are you? If you want the antidote, why don't you just take out a talisman to exchange for it? The man shivered under Nangong Yu's gaze. His voice trembled. Your Highness Hell King, please spare this humble one's life. I am the elder of Nalan family, Nalan Yinming. Hearing these words, Nangong Yu's eyebrows jumped up. Without speaking, he and Hushi both looked towards each other. Hushi's expression was somewhat grave. Nowadays, her appearance was completely different from Nalan Hushi's. Although this was someone from Nalan family, they still shouldn't be able to recognize her. But Nalan Yinming said he recognized her. Nalan Yinming didn't see the change in Hushi and Nangong Yu's complexions, but he still sucked in a breath. I already exchanged my talisman for the antidote, but it still wasn't enough to completely get rid of the poison in my body. The antidote wasn't able to completely detoxify the poison? Hushi's eyebrows raised. What were you doing previously? Nalan Yinming's eyes flashed. However, his life was on the line, so he didn't dare to conceal anything and began to immediately explain the situation. Chapter 344 Nalan Yinming. As it turns out, Nalan Yinming originally entered the Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory with many life-saving pills gifted from Nalan Zhengze. One of these pills was the famous 9 unequal wrongs pill. This pill would be able to save someone, no matter how serious the poison. And if the poison couldn't be completely relieved, it would at least delay the spread of the poison. It's due to this pill that Nalan Zhengze was able to enter the Doctors Association as a rank 3 doctor. The Doctors Association only allowed rank 4 doctors in, and each Doctors Association member had a unique and unmatched skill. With Nalan Zhengze's ability, he wouldn't be eligible to enter the Doctors Association. Actually, Nalan Yinming entered the medicinal field at the same time as Hushi's group. When the mist was cleared, many warriors seized the opportunity to enter the medicinal field, and Nalan Yinming was one of them. In the beginning, Nalan Yinming didn't enter the medicinal field, so he didn't get poisoned. However, he wanted to curry favor with the Feng family and ultimately entered. In the end, he wasn't careful enough and touched some of the pus. Once he got affected by this strange intoxicated blood poison, he immediately ate his 9 unequal wrongs pill, believing that the poison wouldn't be able to kill him. Unfortunately, he found out that after eating his 9 unequal wrongs pill, it didn't detoxify the poison. On the other hand, it seemed to cause the poison to rot his body much faster than others. Adding on to the fact that Feng Lianying was unable to treat people using her 5 elements blood coagulation pill, Nalan Yinming thought he was utterly screwed. However, he didn't expect a youngster, at only foundation establishment stage, named Shiyu would be able to successfully detoxify people. It wasn't until this moment that Nalan Yinming started to take a closer look at Hushi, and the more he looked, the more shocked he became. Because the appearance of the godly doctor named Shiyu was uncannily similar to that person, and that person's medical skills was also exceptional, exactly the same as the ones this person in front of him had. Nalan family also obtained some of that person's medicinal inheritance, which was the only reason it was able to reach the status it had today. The more Nalan Yinming thought, the more scared he became and the more excited he became. If he was able to bring this youngster back to Nalan family, then Nalan Manor's glory would be around the corner. But because Hell King supported Shiyu, Nalan Yinming didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. However, he didn't expect that because he had taken the 9 unequal wrongs pill, even though he took the antidote, the poison didn't completely improve like everyone else. Although it delayed the poison taking his life, the poison was still spreading in his body. Chapter 345, Third Young Master Nalan Ziyun. At this time, Wu Yu and Gu Lu Feng both walked up and stood behind Hushi, but when they saw the woman in the scroll's appearance, they sucked in a cold breath. This woman's phoenix eyes, perfect and jade-like skin resembled Jiutian Xuanu one, as if she, Jiutian Xuanu, had come back down to the secular world. But what was the most shocking was that this woman's appearance was 78% the same as Hushi's. Looking closely at Hushi, people could almost image Hushi in woman's clothing. Gu Lu Feng's eyes held enthusiasm and shock, but he quickly pushed his feelings away, forcibly suppressing his throbbing heart. Wu Yu couldn't help but exclaim out in surprise, "This isn't his family's Wang Fei, right?" He looked at Nangongyu, then at Hashi and saw that his master's facial expression remained unperturbed. Not only that, his tender eyes never once stopped looking at Hashi. Hashi already knew that the woman in the scroll was this body's mother, and Lingyue. However, Hashi looked towards Nailin Yinming and indifferently asked, "Who is this?" Nailin Yinming said at once, You first must save me. As long as you save my life, I'll tell you everything you want to know." Hashi sneered at him, looking at him condescendingly. "I don't accept your deal." Finished speaking, Hashi turned and began to walk away. Seeing her carefree appearance, Nailin Yiming panicked. He hurriedly walked 2 steps forward, loudly saying, I'll talk. This is Lingyue. She is the concubine of the current head of Nailin family, Nailin Jingzhu." Slowing down, Nailin Yiming lowered his voice and with a dignified look, he slowly said, "And you? You're most likely the child that Nailin family lost more than 10 years before. Nailin Ziyun." Hashi's heart was slightly moved, but her face remained unmoved. She sneered, "Nailin Ziyun? Do you take me as a 3-year-old child, thinking you'll fool me so easily?" In all of Yinjing City, who doesn't know that Nailin Manor's third young master, Nailin Ziyun, was sent off to become a disciple of a large sect's master? If I am Nailin Ziyun, then who was the person sent away to the large sect? Nailin Yinming's eyes were anxious, his eyes showing his internal struggle. However, he kept insisting, "You must believe me. You truly are Nailin Ziyun. You are my Nailin family's child. If not, then how could your appearance so closely resemble Lingyue's?" Hashi merely sneered. "In this world, how many people look alike? This is just some insignificant picture, yet you want me to believe your lies. Do you take me as an idiot?" Nailin Yiming felt the poison in his body seem to worsen. Seeing that Hashi didn't believe him, he felt both fear and hate. He thought, just wait for this stinky boy to return to Nailin family. He must torture this youngster. Only then can he eliminate today's humiliation. Chapter 346. Where did he truly go? Save me. Quickly save me. I am Nailin family's great elder. I'm the only one who can bring you back to Nailin family. I'm the only one who can get you to recognize your ancestors. Do you hear me? Quickly save me. If you want to blame something, then blame the fact that you're Nailin family's people." Hashi coldly chuckled. Nobody knew when another bottle appeared in her hands, but she lightly sprinkled the medicine out. Immediately, Nailin Yinming's shrieks became fiercer and his body was unable to keep rolling. He was only able to lie on the floor and twitch. The wound on his body burst open and black blood and pus sprayed everywhere. In the blink of an eye, a puddle of blood formed. Whilst Hashi was sprinkling her medicine on Nailin Yinming, Nangongyu had long separated the crowd from Nailin Yinming. At this moment, he saw that even Nailin Yinming's skeleton was gone. However, Hashi's gaze was filled with deep concentration. He thought that Hashi was grieving and couldn't help but walk up to Hashi, taking her into his arms and hugging her closely, softly saying, "No matter what type of person you are, or what sort of identity you have in my heart, you are still my Sheer. You are still my Wang Fei." Hashi was distracted for a while. By the time she realized that this fellow was comforting her, she couldn't help but feel as if it's simultaneously somewhat funny and moving. Shaking her head, "Regarding Nailin family's people, as far as I'm concerned, they're just insignificant strangers to me. How can I be affected by their matters, life or death? I was merely thinking about Nailin Ziyun." Hashi's only impression on Nailin Ziyun, this younger brother, was from when she was merely 5 years old. At that time, they were still living in the small courtyard, mutually dependent for life. However, when Nailin Hashi was 5, she fell ill with a fever. After she woke up, she never saw her younger brother again. Wet Nurse Qian had told her, Nailin Manor's people had taken her younger brother away. The previous Nailin Hashi had gone to Nailin Manor to inquire about this matter, but it was never disclosed to her that her younger brother wasn't even in Nailin Manor anymore. In fact, he was sent away to study in a sect. Time flies and in the blink of an eye, 10 or so odd years had passed. Nalan Hushi had already given up on seeing her little brother again. However, that doesn't mean she doesn't miss him. This was actually one of Nalan Hushi's last desires before she died. She wishes to confirm that her younger brother has lived well. Now, Nalan Yiming told her that the third young master, Nalan Ziyun, studying at the sect was fake. Then where did he truly go? Even if Nalan Ziyun died at the age of 5, nobody would have pursued the matter. Why did Nalan Zhengzi still bring out a fake Nalan Ziyun? After listening to Hushi's words, he knew that she wasn't grieving, and Nan Gongyu let out a breath. Lightly stroking her hair, "You can rest assured. I'll send people to go investigate Nalan Ziyun." Hushi nodded her head and was just about to speak when she suddenly heard the sound of something plopping coming from within the medicinal field. Soon after, a flash of purple also appeared. Dan Dan and the purple abyss vine, who were originally wreaking havoc inside the medicinal field, had returned into her space. Hushi didn't enter the space and could only watch as Dan Dan's whole body was enveloped in a spiritual aura. His small stomach was perfectly round, and he seemed to have finally eaten enough. Hushi suddenly felt as if she didn't know whether to laugh or cry, scolding him, "Little Chowhound." But before she could put her heart down, Purple Abyss Vine energetically came up, and its anxious thoughts were felt by Hushi. The Purple Abyss Vine was apparently very uneasy and fretful. However, it had no way to clearly express what it felt uneasy about. Hushi was puzzled when suddenly a strong wave of spiritual force burst out from inside the medicinal field. 1. Mutually dependent for life, to rely on one another for survival. Chapter 347, completely healed immediately after. A dazzling white light beam descended from the sky. Along with the beam came an immense force of spiritual power pushing down on the medicinal field. When the beam of light made contact, it quickly spread. In the blink of an eye, it covered every inch of the ground in the medicinal field. To add on to that, all the warriors standing in the middle of the light beam seemed to be isolated from everyone else. They seemed to have become invisible. Nobody could see or hear them anymore. Everyone couldn't help but panic. Most of all, this group of people who just experienced the impact of intoxicated blood poison. At this moment, their hearts were filled with fear of the unknown. Nan Gongyu's response quickly covered Hushi and Qing Long with his void spiritual barrier. Wu Yu waited for everyone else to be enveloped. However, just as he was about to pull Hushi into his embrace, a green beam quickly shot towards Hushi. For a moment, Hushi didn't even process what had happened. She only felt a boom in her head, and following that, everything in front of her eyes changed. After returning back to her soul, Hushi found herself in both an unfamiliar yet familiar place. She said it was familiar because this was the place she had met the little golden dragon and lifted its seal. She said it was unfamiliar because this originally dusky and narrow space had undergone some large changes. The whole space had become gold and jade in glorious splendor, too. There were countless night pearls hanging from the ceiling, giving off a soft yet bright light. Originally, there were fuzzy mirrors all around, but now they all seemed clear. The mirror showed the scene inside the secret territory, including Nan Gongyu and everyone else's images. However, currently, the images in the mirror were all frozen, as if time had completely stopped in the secret territory. There was suspicion in Hushi's heart. She secretly thought, could it be that because the little golden dragon ate the divine dragon fruit and woke up, bringing her back to his original nest? At this moment, she heard the little golden dragon's old and decrepit voice. "Woman, at least one can say you have a good heart. You know that Benzong III got such an injury in order to save you, so you obtained the divine dragon fruit for Benzong. At least Benzong's efforts in Zijin Palace weren't wasted." After that was said, a very small gold dragon sitting on a pink cloud came down in front of Hushi. It seems that the little golden dragon had completely healed by now. The golden scales on his body were glistening. Along with his body's originally thumb-sized width got wider. However, the cotton candy-like pink cloud he was riding on, when matched with his tiny body, didn't match the fact that he was the noble and mighty golden dragon. Hushi restrained herself from smiling. At least your scales resemble a dragon's now, unlike before when someone could have mistaken you as a snake. The little golden dragon suddenly became angry at Hushi, pointing at her and cursing incessantly. Hushi suddenly got rid of her teasing tone. No matter what, thank you for protecting Dandan at Zijin Palace, and thank you for protecting me too. The little golden dragon's scolding stopped and coldly snorted. This still isn't good enough. Hushi didn't mind his arrogant character and changed the subject. As long as you're good, then it's good. Why did you suddenly bring me back to this room? What of this matter of me bringing you back? Having heard what was said, the little golden dragon raised its voice. It's clearly you who triggered the secret territory's restriction, starting the transfer of the secret territory's controlling right. 1. After returning back to her soul, in this case, Hushi didn't actually leave her soul. She just returned from Law Land. 2. Gold and jade in glorious splendor. A dazzling sight. 3. Binzong. Literally translates as this senior. By becoming Binzon's genuine master, to obtain my whole heart's willing approval, only then can you become the secret territory's true master. As soon as the little golden dragon said this, it swooped down, and when it neared the side of Hushi's neck, it firmly bit down. For a while Hushi didn't see anything. She didn't have enough time to dodge. She only felt the pain in her neck. Soon after, a gold-colored beam enveloped both her and the little golden dragon. Moments later, the golden beam scattered and the wound on Hushi's neck disappeared without a trace. However, the golden mark of a dragon appeared on the hollow of her palm. This golden mark was completely different from the gold lines she received when she and the little golden dragon initially drew their contract. This mark was incomparably clear. It seemed to have gone deep into her flesh. It also held a faint feeling of great power. Although the golden dragon mark quickly disappeared from Hushi's palm, she was still able to clearly sense it. It seemed as if there was a strange memory that didn't belong to her, burned into her mind. Hushi knew that these memories were part of the dragon race's inheritance. But now, these memories were fuzzy and she was only able to see one sentence clearly. A 1. By an accident arising from many causes, a freak combination of facts. Chapter 349. The best timing through blood. To serve as my brand. Abandon hatred, forget glory. Thousands of generations, never betraying. May the dragon race's glory from millions of years prior one day appear again. Hushi didn't understand much of what this sentence meant, but strangely enough, she could sense the sorrow, despair, and hope contained within the words. And at this moment, under the soles of her feet, a brilliant light suddenly started brightly shining. Just now, Hushi discovered that the design engraved on the floor of the room resembled a pentagram. Each of the 5 angles of the pentagram was perfectly aligned with one of the mirrors while she stood in the center of the pentagram. The entire pentagram was lit up and Hushi felt as if the mirrors were all flying towards her. Soon after, she was able to clearly see every nook and cranny inside the secret territory. The little golden dragon's proud voice and mischievous laughter was soon heard. When the controlling right of the secret territory is handed over, the entire secret territory is in a completely static state. This includes all the magical beasts and martial artists currently inside the secret territory. In the entire sealed dragon domain, only you and I are able to move, although this period of time is short. Moreover, later on, even if you are in control of the secret territory, you won't be able to replicate this again. The most you can do is drive the people you dislike out of the secret territory. But now, during this time, no matter what you wish to do, these people are completely unable to resist. Once Hushi heard these words, a weird smile appeared on her face. The little golden dragon's words weren't wrong. This truly was the best timing, especially at this moment. Hushi already spotted the frozen figures of Feng Yunjing and Feng Lianying. They were currently next to a stream of spring water in the Ice-Snow realm. Several disciples from Luli sect were currently in the process of preparing to remove a nearby tiny tree. Having just received control of the secret territory, naturally, Hushi also knew of each inch of soil and treasure inside the secret territory. She knew that this stream was called the spiritual spring stream, and that tree was the spring tree. That tree was one of 3 of Miluo continent's great tree deities. Every 200 years, a liquid called Heaven's Alcohol will flow out from the spiritual spring tree's roots. When mixed with the spring water, a small puddle of spiritual spring stream will form. In Miluo continent, the Feng family was currently like the sun at noon. In addition to the fact that their skills were more talented than those of ordinary individuals, the Feng family also had a group of high-level alchemists. The pills refined by these alchemists were able to allow the children of Feng family to advance by leaps and bounds. However, it's not without harm if someone takes the pills for a long time. No matter how pure and perfect the pill was, each pill contained quantities of an individual medicine. These individual medicines would accumulate and made it easy for martial artists to go overboard when being promoted. According to research done by ancestors of Feng family, this spiritual spring tree was able to dissolve this individual medicine. Therefore, Feng Yunjing was determined to get this tree. Furthermore, this tree was difficult to locate inside the ice-snow realm. Seeing this scene, Hushi couldn't help but smile. Luckily for her, the time she received the inheritance was very good. Otherwise, Feng Yunjing would be able to take away this spiritual spring tree. Although she didn't value the tree as rare, when she thought about her enemy getting good things, she felt unhappy. To the side, the little golden dragon's mouth twitched. Unfortunately, although this standstill of time is powerful, there are some restrictions. You can't touch the bodies of martial artists. Otherwise, boss, you are the knife that erased that slut. Isn't that just death ending all your troubles? Chapter 350. Slowly settling accounts. Hushi softly smiled. To erase her with a knife? Isn't that too cheap of a fate for Feng Lianing? Rest assured, my patience is very good. What we have is time. I'll slowly settle my accounts with her. Seeing that the time left for the people to remain frozen was almost up, Hushi no longer hesitated. She quickly began to manipulate the people inside the secret territory. Although she couldn't directly touch the people inside the secret territory, she could move them around. The storage items that were stored inside the storage rings that the martial artists carried around were hard for her to take. However, the charms they wore on the outside or held in their hands, she kindly took, as if they were being offered to her. Hushi's mouth picked up into a sinister smile. Looking around, she quickly made up her mind. After Feng Yunjing and his party left the Greenwood realm, they quickly found the spiritual spring tree by following the secret method that Feng family's elder alchemist provided. But there were 7 rank 5 magical beasts guarding the spiritual spring tree. Each rank 5 magical beast was equivalent to gold core stage cultivation. Feng Yunjing, Feng Lianing, and disciples of the Luli sect wasted a lot of labor in order to completely defeat these 7 rank 5 magical beasts. Seeing that the spiritual spring tree was so close, Feng Yunjing's eyes flashed with something. As long as he was able to obtain this tree, the danger of taking so many pills would be eliminated. Then, Feng family would be able to stand at the summit of Miluo continent. From now on, nobody on this earth would be able to fight or obstruct him. Everything he wanted, every person he wanted, he would be able to easily grasp in the palm of his hand. Everybody was filled with excitement. They were so excited that they didn't even bother to clean up the 7 rank 5 magical beasts. They took out a 9th level spiritual shovel and prepared to move the spiritual spring tree. But after a quarter of an hour, something occurred that shocked Feng Yunjing. His hand just touched one of the leaves on the spiritual spring tree before he felt the sky spin and the earth go round one. When he opened his eyes, the scenery before his eyes had completely changed. The sounds of the magical beasts' roars sounded in the air, rising and falling one after another. What stood in front of them wasn't 7 rank 5 magical beasts anymore. Instead, hundreds of thousands of magical spirit beasts surrounded them. These magical beasts contained 3 rank 4 magical beasts, some rank 5, and even one at rank 6. Not only that, but they were no longer located in front of the spiritual spring tree. Instead, they found themselves in a desolate desert. Feng Yunjing's face changed. He was just about to use the weapon he carried to resist the magical beasts. But he was stunned to find that the weapon that was originally in his palm had, at some unknown point, disappeared. As it turns out, Feng Lianing, Nie Jinchen, and the rest of the disciples of Lu Li sect found themselves in a similar situation. Feng Lianing had long since already been scared stupid by the magical beast's roars, and the weapon in her hand had also disappeared. She was so panicked, she found that she didn't have enough time to take out another weapon from her storage ring before a magical beast snarled and pounced towards her. Uh, uh, I don't want to die. Feng Lianing shrieked and ruthlessly pulled a disciple of Lu Li sect to stand in front of her. Only a tearing sound was heard as the disciple was horribly torn apart. The Lu Li sect disciple didn't even have time to groan before they became a pool of flesh. Nie Jinchen also found himself caught off guard, and to add on to the fact, he was caught off guard by a rank 5 magical beast. He was terrified, noticing what Feng Lianing did. He also instinctively pulled 2 Lu Li sect disciples in front of him. Feng Yunjing's cultivation level was higher than those 2. Therefore, he was able to take out a new weapon and kill in all directions. However, the number of magical beasts in front of them was too high, and the bodies of these few people all contained the scent of the spiritual spring tree, causing the magical beasts became extremely excited. Even Feng Yunjing was unable to make them fearfully withdraw. Chapter 351, Leaving the Secret Territory momentarily, the flesh flew in all directions. The bones rumbled and rolled around on the floor. In the hot and overgrown desert, the air reeked of blood for a short period of time. This caused the people to feel sick and heightened the magical beast's excitement. As time went by, Feng Yunjing's complexion became more and more unsightly. The spiritual power inside his body was beginning to run out, and the people around him, the disciples of Lu Li sect, were slowly dwindling. Some of them were devoured by the magical beasts and others were taken by Feng Lianing and Nie Jinchen to act as a shield. Even Feng Lianing and Nie Jinchen, who took so many of the disciples to use as scapegoats, were also becoming battered and exhausted. Above all were Feng Lianying's clothes, which were originally used to showcase her elegant figure. Although they did have some defensive attributes, how could they possibly be enough to endure against the magical beasts? By now her clothes had already been torn into shreds by the magical beasts, showing faint traces of her underwear. Most of the disciples of Lu Li sect had already been injured or dead, leaving almost none left. Feng Yunjing was stuck in combat with the rank 6 magical beast as the 3 rank 4 magical beasts pounced towards Feng Lianing. These several people's spiritual power was almost used up. Feng Lianing couldn't hold it anymore. She fell apart and shouted, No, I don't want to die. Save me, Nie Jinchen, don't you like me? Quick, save me. Saying this, she grabbed Nie Jinchen and pulled him in front of her. Quick, block the attack for me. Nie Jinchen's eyes flashed with extreme fear and shock as he began to randomly swinging the long sword in his hand around. However, one magical beast still managed to bite down on his left hand. The only noise he heard was ka-ka as piercing bursts of pain stabbed him. Nie Jinchen could feel the bones on his left hand breaking apart. Meanwhile, another magical beast's bloody mouth came near his face. The fear of life or death scared Nie Jinchen into freezing up. He wanted to call for help, he wanted to escape, but his whole body seemed to be rigid. Aside from desperately waiting for his death, he could do nothing else. He thought about how he granted whatever was asked for from Feng Lianing over these past 10 years, how meek and subservient he was. Then he thought about how ruthlessly she just treated him. At this moment, any love Nie Jinchen held for Feng Lianing completely vanished. Except for undeserved desire, the only feelings he had left over were a heart full of hate and towards her. Ideas of trampling her filled his mind. It seemed like, soon, the lives of Feng Lianing and Nie Jinchen were about to end, and Feng Yunjing wasn't faring much better either. During this time, 1,000 pounds were hung by a thread. However, the scene before these three people's eyes suddenly changed. There was no longer the scorching hot temperatures, the magical beasts' stinky breaths, dust-filled sky, and the foul smell that caused people to feel nauseous. Instead, it was replaced by the sweet smell of vegetation and a gentle breeze. Feng Yunjing and the others looked all around. They found out that they were unexpectedly in the middle of a valley. Moreover, the landform of this valley was awfully familiar. Wasn't this where these several people initially entered into Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory? What's the matter with this? How could they have suddenly appeared in the middle of a group of magical beasts? Then, in the blink of an eye, leave the secret territory? Feng Yunjing was both shocked and angry when he suddenly heard a shout. Ah! The rank 5 spirit crystal I just won. I was clearly holding it in my hand. Why is it missing now? I was clearly in Burning Heaven Realm just a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye I'm here now? The box full of spiritual fruits I harvested, its value was millions of crystal stones worth of treasures. With great difficulty, I was able to defeat the guardian beast in order to pick these fruits. How are there none left now? In the end, who's done this? Why have we all been sent out? Chapter 352 Jade Body on Display. Don't tell me that something suddenly happened inside Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory, so it pushed us outside? Everybody's tongues were wagging. Their faces were filled with shock, but nobody was able to figure out what had happened. Suddenly, someone's deep voice sounded out. I feel as if this situation seems to feel as if somebody has gained control over the secret dragon domain. What? How could this be? Legends say this secret territory is the almighty martial artist's. How could it be controlled by someone else? Feng Yunjing's face didn't appear nervous. He slowly took out a spirit pill and swallowed the replenishing spirit pill. But something gloomy and dark flashed by his eyes. Just now, he almost obtained the spiritual spring tree. But now, he failed through lack of a final effort and even lost dozens of Luli sect's elite disciples. This time, the loss Feng family suffered could be said to be disastrous. Zijin Palace's inheritance wasn't obtained. In 100 Herb missed Feng Lianying lost popular feeling, and most importantly, they narrowly missed getting the spiritual spring tree. This time, he truly didn't know what to say when he returned. It was just, how could he always feel as if all these acts were deliberately planned against Feng family? Just like the situation now, where they were thrown out of the secret territory. The martial artists before them also lost the weapons they had been carrying in their hands, and their dozen or so people were thrown into the middle of a crowd of magical beasts. They experienced 9 deaths and were still alive one, almost not making it out alive. Could it be that someone truly got control over the secret territory? If that's the case, who was able to obtain control over the Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory? Could it be Nangongyu? No. Impossible. Feng Yunjing's thoughts swept past this idea, immediately denying it. What type of place was Sealed Dragon territory? These martial artists in front of him only knew one and understood half, two. But he, who was the person who held great political power inside Feng family, was clear. This sacred place had existed for a millennium. Every big influential family on Miluo continent had been preparing for Secret Dragon Domain's secret territory to open for several hundred years. In the event that someone was able to get control over Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory, then how powerful was that person? If this type of person truly decided to oppose Feng family, then how could they, Feng family, possibly resist? Just as Feng Yunjing was just thinking about such a person, he heard a cry of surprise. In the blink of an eye, he saw Feng Lianying crawling up from the ground. It's unclear whether it was due to the fact that she was roasted by the hot temperatures inside the barren desert, or if it was due to the situation with the magical beast scratching her. But when she stood up, the clothes on her body, unexpectedly, completely fell apart and turned into a puddle of powder. In a flash, Feng Lianying was no longer wearing any clothes, causing her jade-like body to be put on display. Originally, Everyone was busy being angry over their lost weapons and asking why they had been sent out of the secret territory. So, nobody paid attention to Feng Lianing. But everyone's gaze turned towards Feng Lianing after her shout just now. Immediately, there were gasps of surprise coming all around. No sooner after one subsides, another arises. Most of all the low-level male martial artists looked up and down at Feng Lianying's fruit-like body as their eyes filled with lust and excitement. Someone couldn't help themselves and whispered, "Aya, 3. This couldn't be the Ice Lotus Fairy, right? I didn't expect her to be so passionate and bold, not even wearing clothes in front of all these martial artists." Clicking their tongue, "Look at this soft and tender flesh. Pampered girls raised by influential families really aren't the same. If I can get on intimate terms with this person, I would willingly die." How could Feng Lianing ever imagine that after struggling to escape from that beast, going back would also welcome such humiliation? For a moment, her beautiful face was snow white and her two hands were clenched together, hugging her shivering body. She wanted to take out a new set of clothes from her storage ring, but was unable to because her spiritual power was all used up. She wouldn't be able to take anything out for a while. 9 deaths and were still alive. They were only narrowly able to escape 2 new one and understood half. Feng Yunjing is saying these people are ignorant. 3. Aya, a term used to express dismay, exasperation, or surprise. Chapter 353. Completely ruined immediately, her pair of beautiful eyes filled with tears. It would appear to be as if I saw a white lotus, but the male martial artists all began to feel sorry and take pity on her. But there were also female martial artists who disapproved of her attitude, coldly standing to the side and heatedly mocking her. Truly shameless. Obviously you're wanton, yet you're still sitting here putting out a pitiful appearance. Exactly, if I was her, I would have been ashamed to even see people. Unexpectedly, she puts on a pitiful face, trying to get me to feel sorry for her. What Ice Lotus Fairy? All I see is a white lotus flower putting on an act of flirtatious behavior. Feng Lianing just got up before realizing how awful her current situation was. Originally, she wanted to put on a weak, couldn't-do-harmed expression in order to evoke some sympathy. But now, having heard the comments of these women, her face twisted and the shame in her eyes completely changed to bitter hatred. In the end, who was it? Who harmed Feng family? Who caused Feng Lianing to make such a fool of herself? The painstaking effort she exerted to build up her image these past few years, her blissful fated marriage. It was all ruined in these short few days, completely ruined. No matter who caused her to be so humiliated today, she wanted to put it all on Shiyu, that slut. She definitely won't let go of that slut. There will be a day when she kills that slut and leaves her without a burial site. Under other people's loathing, wanton, passionate, or criticizing gazes, Feng Lianying's body had almost no clothing to cover herself and felt as if there were brambles and thorns on her back. Unfortunately, she completely wasted her spiritual power. She couldn't even take out one piece of clothing. Her eyes were reddened with tears. Suddenly, a warm piece of clothing was draped over her, covering her body. Feng Lianing turned her head around and saw Nie Jinshan's deeply concerned gaze. "Lianing Mimi, are you okay? Those magical beasts from before didn't hurt you, right?" Feng Lianing stared blankly, recalling her previous actions inside the group of magical beasts, how she pulled Nie Jinshan in front of her to act as her shield and suddenly felt as if she had a bit of a guilty conscience. Nie Jinshan seemed to have not noticed her emotions, softly saying, "If Lianing Mimi doesn't take offense, she can wear my clothing." At first, Feng Lianing was embarrassed, but after raising her head up and seeing Nie Jinshan's tender and infatuated gaze, she stood up, feeling proud and arrogant again. Nie Jinshan was the dog that stuck to her side. No matter how many times she tossed him around or humiliated, he would never betray her. Although she didn't care much for this dog continually pursued her. This greatly satisfied her vanity. Feng Lianing was too busy feeling proud of herself and didn't notice Nie Jinchen bowing his head down to cover the cold look flitting through his eyes. Just as Feng Lianing put on Nie Jinchen's clothes, Feng Yunjing coldly smiled. Let's go. We'll return to Feng family first before discussing. They must go back as soon as possible and report today's matter to their elders. As for Feng Lianing, that stupid woman who lost face today, Feng Yunjing already concocted a plan to completely abandon this waste. Watching as Feng Lianing and Feng Yunjing prepared to leave, the people who were previously too scared to speak out in front of Feng family's great prestige suddenly shouted out. The scene regarding Feng family's eldest daughter, the Ice Lotus Fairy, was quickly spread through word of mouth. Everybody repeated over and over again how Feng Lianying's body was on display after everyone left the secret territory. By the next day, the news was popular gossip alongside news of Seal Dragon Domain's secret territory. In Yinjing City, inside all the great streets and alleys, too, everybody knew this information. 1. Brambles and thorns on her back. She felt uneasy and nervous, too. Great streets and alleys everywhere in the city. Chapter 354. Repaying double the amount. Watching as the three figures vanished, the little golden dragon standing by Hushi gloomily said, "Such a pity. If this time when the secret territory's control is being handed over was longer, then those three people would have been torn apart by the magical beasts." Contrary to one might think, Hushi didn't seem to have any big reaction. She was standing to the side, looking over all the treasures she plundered today, faintly saying, Feng Yunjing is at nascent soul stage. If his life was truly in danger, the magical beasts may not be able to do much damage to him. In fact, he may even do damage to the secret territory instead. You should have also seen the chilliness in Ye Jinchen's eyes. Looks like he won't be protecting his Ice Lotus Fairy with all his heart anymore. To add on to the fact the shame Feng Lianing just lost in front of everyone, it won't be long before everyone knows about what happened here. Hee. Inside Seal Dragon Domain's secret territory control room, Hushi could not only control every corner inside the secret territory, she could clearly see about 10 kilometers outside as well. In other words, even if she didn't leave the secret territory, the entire Tsang Mountain was under her control as well. Therefore, even though Feng Lianing and the other martial artists were kicked out of the secret territory, Hushi could still clearly see all of their actions. Hushi's mouth lifted up into an unfeeling smile, and in passing she waved her hand, taking the treasured items she just earned into her space. Unhurriedly she said, Feng Lianing, this vicious and merciless White Lotus. First she hurt you and Dan, then she continuously plots against me, trying to kill me. How could she die so easily to those magical beasts? Isn't that too convenient for her? Rest assured, Long One. This woman hurt you and Dan. There will definitely be a day when she repays you double the amount. After Hushi's words, she listened to the little divine dragon getting fired up. He really was worthy of being her family's boss. Although his strength wasn't profound yet, his domineering attitude was really matchless. It was until his last few words that caused Hushi's smile to come crashing down. Don't call me Long, it's not imposing enough. I'm the magnificent golden dragon. How can I be called such a wet-behind-the-ears name, too? Hushi chuckled. This is the nickname Dan gave you. If you want to protest, go find Dan. But, I'll warn you, if you cause Dan to cry, my family's Little Purple won't let you get away with it. Little Purple is precisely the purple abyss vine. After this guy and Dan ate all those magical plants, they developed a deep foodie friendship. Adding to the fact was that Dan was especially clever and obedient. Every day, he would call Little Purple Anti-Purple Abyss, causing the Purple Abyss Vine to treat Dan even more generously than her, the master. The little divine dragon's face immediately came crashing down. He definitely wasn't scared of Dan. But, when he thought about that adorable little pink pig's weeping appearance, the little divine dragon felt as if all the scales on his body hurt. Especially twitchy, especially unable to endure. Hushi no longer paid any mind to this confused little guy. She tilted her head up, directing her attention to the top of the room. Actually, this secret room was not just a singular room, but the basement of a palace. After gaining control of the secret territory, Hushi found that the ceiling in this room was completely clear. Looking up, she could see what appeared to be the site of a dazzling palace. One, Long. This is a nickname of sorts for the little divine dragon. Long means dragon too wet behind the ears, immature and unexperienced. Chapter 355, Overcoming Catastrophe to Ascend Heavenwards from Here. One could see the faint shadow of a flying cyan sword. The little golden dragon followed Hushi's gaze and looked at the flying cyan sword. His face couldn't help but be filled with a longing expression. That's the heart of Sealed Dragon Domain. It's also the most precious item inside the entirety of Secret Territory, Sealed Dragon Sword. That year, when my family's master flew upwards, he used this exact spirit weapon. At that time on Miluo continent, my master killed gods if gods blocked and killed Buddhas if Buddhas blocked one. Except for those old fellows who were on the same level as master, other people couldn't even see master's back. And I am one of master's spirit pets. How powerful is that? Nobody is my rival. But afterward, when master overcame catastrophe and ascended heavenwards, too, Qing Sha and I failed and were unable to follow master. Spirit beast Qing Sha was completely extinguished. All that's left is a broken strand of primordial spirit that's left by the owner inside the secret territory. But I'm better than Qing Sha, that idiot. Although I was also extinguished, the dragon race has the ability to reincarnate. We can reincarnate if we give up on our cultivation and start fresh. So, master left Sealed Dragon Domain to me and left the Sealed Dragon Sword on me, so it wouldn't fall apart, letting me wait for a fated person to come in and break the seal so that I may see the light again. However, although the seal has been removed and I can cultivate again, I can't see my master ever again in this lifetime. Flying beyond the boundaries? Hushi's eyes brightened up and her lips curled up into a fighting spirit smile. Ever since she came to this strange world, she never thought about stopping her steps, becoming stronger until she can't be restricted or suppressed again, until her two eyes can look over the whole world and her feet can walk over every inch of land. Looking at the little golden dragon's sadness, Hushi smiled proudly. Isn't it just ascending upwards after overcoming catastrophe? After being defeated once, what are you afraid of? If you follow me, there will surely be a time when you can attempt to overcome catastrophe and ascend heavenwards again. When the time comes, are you scared you won't be able to find your previous master? The little golden dragon was stunned. It wanted to ridicule this woman, overestimating her capabilities. One needed to at least be at Meridian stage to overcome catastrophe and ascend heavenwards. This was such a distant matter. Saying these words now, it was just indulging in one's fantasies. But seeing Hushi's brilliant and bright eyes, the little golden dragon suddenly felt as if it was unable to refute her words. It always felt as if, no matter what formidable task this girl in front of it said, she seemed to always be able to accomplish it. Hushi no longer talked and pitifully looked towards the Sealed Dragon Sword. Because the level of the Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory was too high, she was unable to access some places, even though she was now in control of the secret territory. For example, the Sealed Dragon Sword inside the palace's main hall. At the very least, she needed to be Gold Core stage in order to bypass the restriction. Otherwise, if you were able to hold the sword but you hurt all sides, just think about it. But it's just wishful thinking, nothing more. If she was truly able to take out the Sealed Dragon Sword, the little golden dragon was afraid that she would be chased by people everywhere. After finishing dealing with the secret territory's matters and sending the little golden dragon into her space, Hushi went back and appeared in front of Nangongyu. Sheer. Upon seeing Hushi, Nangongyu firmly carried her. His face was full of anxiousness. Did you get hurt? Sensing Nangongyu's anger and concern, Hashi was distracted. Immediately, she softly said, "Didn't I leave you a slip of paper saying that I was fine?" 1. Killed gods if gods blocked, and killed Buddhas if Buddhas blocked, to overcome every obstacle. 2. Overcoming catastrophe to ascend heavenwards. After overcoming some calamity, one will become a god. Chapter 356, Are You Willing to Marry Me? After Nangong Yu held on to her for a moment, he slowly loosened his grip on her. Pinching her nose and faking anger, he said, "You still dare to talk. You left only a slip of paper with no trace of you around. How was I supposed to know if you were coerced into doing that? Do you still say that I shouldn't have worried?" Hushi lowly coughed twice. She was rarely embarrassed. But at that time, she wanted to let Feng Lianying and Feng Yunjing experience some unluckiness. Momentarily, she was up to her ears in work. 1. So, she only had time to hurriedly leave a slip of paper for Nangongyu and the rest of them. At the time, she didn't think too much of it. Wu Yu and Gu Lufeng weren't as anxious as Nangongyu, but when they saw that Hushi returned safe and sound, they were also quite happy. But thinking about how those several people inexplicably ended up outside the secret territory, Wu Yu couldn't help but ask, "It's very strange. With Seal Dragon Domain's secret territory being so big, unless someone touched the control core, how could everyone has been sent out? Don't tell me that the secret territory encountered some sort of problem, unless someone obtained the Seal Dragon Sword?" As everyone knows, Seal Dragon Domain was used to hold the Seal Dragon Sword. If someone was able to get the sword, then Secret Territory's core control would certainly open. Hushi rubbed her nose and didn't dare to say any more. The little golden dragon had said that before she could hold the Seal Dragon Sword, she must not let anyone know she was the owner of the Secret Territory. This included even the people closest to her. Otherwise, if someone killed her, the Secret Territory would collapse and the little golden dragon would experience a violent death. Nangongyu looked at the deep burning in Hushi's eyes. He seemed to have finally guessed what was going on. But instead of saying anything, he rubbed the top of Hushi's head, softly saying, "Sheer, do you want to come back to Hell King Manor with me?" Hushi gloomily shook her head. "Why do you want me to follow you back to Hell King Manor? I still have to settle some matters inside Song Mountain. Once I finish dealing with them, I'll return to my own courtyard." Unexpectedly, Nangongyu didn't continue to insist. Nodding his head, something gloomy flashed in his eyes. "You returning to your own courtyard is good too. I'll let Wu Xian follow you, to protect you." Just as Hushi was about to retort, Nangongyu extended his hand out to softly caress her warm cheek, saying with a gentle and low voice, "During this time, I won't be able to come find you. You have to obediently take good care of yourself and wait for me to come back." And 2. Hushi unhappily slapped his hand away. Unexpectedly, when she slapped his hand, her hand landed on top of his. Unlike previous times, Nangongyu extended his other hand and brought her into his embrace. His deep voice, which faintly seemed to hold weakness and praying, sounded in her ears. "Sheer, in the event that everything is over, are you willing to marry me?" Hushi was stunned. It seemed as if something was stuck in her throat, leaving her speechless. Hushi vaguely knew that Nangongyu needed to attend to a very important and dangerous matter. So the words he spoke just now seemed to sound like his last dying words. Hushi deliberately wanted to question what he was going to do. But seeing Nangongyu's eyes filled with stars and burning, Hushi swallowed any words she wanted to say. Hushi rolled around a small storage ring on her palm. Her complexion was indifferent, and the words she spoke held even less emotions. "I'm replying no to your question. After all, when you go there, only God knows if you'll ever reappear in front of my face again." It wasn't even a moment later when she threw the storage ring onto Nangongyu's body, indifferently saying, "Everything inside here is for you. I believe that these things will be helpful for you, no matter what you're doing." 1. Up to her ears in work. She was so busy, everything basically slipped out of her mind, and or she was too busy to do anything else to it. Same use as okay. Chapter 357. Wait for me to come back. Nangongyu was startled. He looked around inside the storage ring. His eyes quickly showed astonishment. The ring was filled full of magic weapons and spirit fruits that were hard to estimate the worth of. By taking just a bite out of those spirit fruits, one would completely replenish their spirit energy. Additionally, there were also sacred grade fighting pills called Lotus Mark Immortality Peach. In Miluo continent, one of these pills could be estimated to be worth a small city. But Hushi gave him 20 of them, so much so that inside the pile of magic weapons, there was a flying purple sword. Nangongyu's expression was extremely moved. The flying sword appeared in his hand. It quickly released the sound of an imperial chant. This is... Hushi pursued her lips. This isn't the real seal dragon sword. It's a fake the real owner made. But its power is 50% of the original sword. I can't use it at my current strength, so it's better to give it to you. This fake seal dragon sword was originally inside the desolate desert realm. It was there that Hushi noticed its power was formidable. No magical creature dared to enter within 10 lumen of it. So, she took it out. It was only after she took out the fake that she gloomily discovered she couldn't use it. Forget about it. She can't use the real seal dragon sword. But now, she can't even use the fake one. She can only stare at it. Too depressing. Looks like the most important thing to do now is increase her strength. Nangongyu dazedly stared at the long sword in his hand. Nangongyu's eyes glittered with tears. Hushi looked at Nangongyu, who seemed to have turned stupid. She thought he couldn't look up to this seal dragon sword and wanted to say something. But before she could, Nangongyu suddenly extended his hand out and brought her into his embrace. Hugging her closely, he seemed to want to embed her into his flesh and blood. In my life, I've always been fighting alone from the beginning. When I grew up, I blocked wind and covered rain for others. You are the person I wish to protect the most in this life. But you're also the first one that I can't shield under my wing. Sheer, wait for me to come back. You can't become fond of other men, you can't look at other men, and you can't let yourself be hurt. During the first half of Nangongyu's words, Hushi smiled and felt moved. But after hearing his last sentence, she couldn't help but roll her eyes. Pushing him away, she said, "Are you finished with your this can't do and that can't do?" This time, Nangongyu didn't continue speaking. He deeply stared at Hushi, seemingly trying to engrave her image into his mind. Then he quickly turned and left. Qinglong and Wu Yu quickly followed Nangongyu, walking along beside him. They saw him tightly biting his jaw and push his heart down. Master didn't tell Wang Fei the matter they were dealing with this time was to deal with the Feng family at a date earlier than what was originally planned. And Feng family not only had the support of Luli sect and the foundation of a millennium, they also had Feng family's scary influence. It could be said that in terms of going against Feng family this time, Hell King Manor didn't have much odds of success. But Master couldn't wait to abolish Feng family. He couldn't wait to get rid of Feng Yunjing and Feng Lianing, those two people who wished to bring harm to Wang Fei. Even more so, he couldn't wait to impressively marry Wang Fei through the door. Watching Nangongyu and the others leaving, Hushi's heart gave birth to indescribable sorrow. But she quickly threw this sorrow to the back of her mind. Turning around, she walked towards Gu Lufeng, Zhou Yinan, and Gu Yidao. Gu Lufeng was distracted. He couldn't help but keep thinking of the intimate moment Hushi and Nangongyu just shared. Hushi had a delicate face, long eyelashes that slightly trembled, bright eyes, and white teeth. So much so that compared to Nailin Yinming, the women in the drawing, to some degree, she was more elegant. Chapter 358. Returning home, the more Gu Lufeng imagined Hushi as a woman, the more his heart swayed and the face behind his mask was flushed. But quickly, he came back and saw Hushi's concentrated expression as she used a needle on Gu Yidao. The gentleness in his heart scattered and made way for appreciation and respect. She was clearly a male. Furthermore, he was a highly skilled genius doctor, and he was his close friend. How could he, Gu Lufeng, think of him, Hushi/Shiyu, with such thoughts. Gu Lufeng suddenly felt ashamed. Lowering his head, he didn't dare to look at Hushi face to face. Zhou Yinan thought his family's master was too embarrassed to ask Hushi, but at this moment, he couldn't deal with that. Walking 2 steps forward, he asked, Shi Gongzi, that day, when we were inside Zijin Palace Hall, you asked why we would risk our lives to save you. Hushi nodded her head. You want to ask me to save Gu Liufeng's mother? Precisely. Hearing what was said, Zhou Yinan felt overjoyed at the good news. At once, he asked, My family's master's mother has been bedridden for many years. No matter how many genius doctors we invited, it was no help. We're asking genius Dr. Shi to help now. If you want me to save people, that's fine. Hushi nodded her head without hesitation. But I'm also not some god. I can't possibly cure every single sickness. Additionally, I have some matters to settle these few days. Wait a bit. I'll go to Shangda Hall to look for you. At that time, you can go bring me to look at the patient. At first, Zhou Yinan's face seemed to be staring blankly. Following that, his eyes turned red. Putong sounded as he kneeled down on the floor. I'll bring my family's master to thank genius Dr. Shi, who granted us such a huge favor. Gu Lufeng cleared his hand and came over. He pulled the person up from the floor. Facing Hushi, he faintly smiled. Shiyu, I'll wait for you. Saying this, he didn't bother to linger anymore, and without the slightest hesitation, he turned around and walked away. But nobody discovered the romantic love affair in his naturally charming pair of eyes. Now, a dedication and decisiveness settled in his eyes. Although Shiyu denied him, Gu Lufeng decided that if Shiyu was truly able to save his mom, then his life would be Shiyu's. For Shiyu, he wouldn't hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. After sending Nangong Yu and Gu Lufeng, Hushi returned to the secret territory and activated the concealing array. When Seal Dragon Domain's concealing array was active, even nascent soul stage martial artists wouldn't be able to discover the secret territory's location. Forget about trying to enter it. From now on, Song Mountain and Seal Dragon Domain's secret territory was now Hushi's private property. She could open up a few locations inside the secret territory to use as a training ground for her family's people. If there was any danger, she could allow Wet Nurse Chen and the others to enter the secret territory. It really could be said that this was the perfect place to hide and to attack. After finishing with her matters regarding the secret territory, Hushi no longer hesitated. She quickly flew towards B Courtyard. At this moment, her heart gave birth to a sudden feeling of guilt. In front of her eyes, she could practically see Shaoli's lovable and silly smile, Wet Nurse Chen's deeply concerned complexion, and her family's people's adoring and trust-filled eyes. In her previous life, she was just a person. Regardless of how long she left for and no matter where she lived, she always returned to an empty house. She has never been able to call a place home. But in this life, it's different. Inside B Courtyard, there's always people waiting for her, looking forward to her. There will always be a room that's lit up for her, providing her warmth. This is home. With this time's gains, she had confidence that Wet Nurse Chen and everyone else could become stronger. It would also be able to provide for good days ahead for them. Chapter 359 Bloody Slaughterhouse Hushi descended onto a lawn nearby B Courtyard. Just as she was about to go near it, her complexion suddenly changed. Originally, B Courtyard was hidden by an array, but now, it completely disappeared. The wind blew the pungent smell of blood from inside the courtyard. Hushi's heart sunk a little bit. In an instant, her figure appeared inside the courtyard. Not even a moment later, an even heavier smell of blood assaulted one's noses. The blood on the floor seemed to resemble a red lotus blooming one, suddenly causing Hushi's eyes to redden. Hushi stumbled. She was almost unable to keep standing. Just now, she had pictured this warm, peaceful, and harmonious scene. But now, it had transformed into a twisted and sinister scene with corpses and a bloody slaughterhouse. The inside of B Courtyard was in disorder. It was full of corpses. Inside the manor lay a servant girl, Xiao Si, and the low-level martial artists she had been given control over from Nalan family. Every one of them died with eyes filled with fright. Their eyes were wide open. They were dead but wouldn't close their eyes too. And in the center of B courtyard, wet Nurse Chin's body had been carelessly thrown onto the ice-cold floor. Just like the others, her eyes were wide open. There was a gaping hole in her chest and her internal organs were on the ground, smashed by someone's foot. Wet Nurse Chin's eyes had unwillingness and tears of blood, flowing out, as if she had been shouting to be able to see her family's young lady when she was at death's doorstep. However, her breath had long since been cut off and any sign of life had disappeared. Even if Hushi had better medical skills, it's impossible to revive a dead person. Hushi slowly walked up to Wet Nurse Chin. Crouching down next to her, she closed the eyes that were filled with remaining grievances, softly saying, "Wet Nurse, Hushi has come back. Forgive me, Hushi came back late." A flicker of light passed through her eyes, but it quickly changed into coldness that resembled the Azura from hell and killing intent. Her lowered voice was clear and pleasant to listen to, but it also carried a coldness that had people's hairs standing on end. "Wet Nurse, you can rest assured. I'll definitely make the people who did harm to you repay you 100,000 times. Wet Nurse, when you've arrived on the Yellow Springs 4 road, you must walk slowly so you may see their headless bodies, their expressions seeing there at the end. Oh." After she finished speaking these few words, little by little, she gently took Wet Nurse Chin's internal organs and reinserted them into her stomach. Then, she took out a silver sewing needle. Her hands were quick and moved as if they were in a dance, sewing back the cut-open stomach as if it hadn't been damaged before. The elegant youth's expression was distinctly cold, and the corner of her mouth even held a sneer. She sat on the floor, in between the blood, bodies, and wreckage. Her 2 hands were covered in blood, but her finger, which was well-proportioned and seemed to be carved from jade, held a needle and seemed to be dancing as if it was a fantasy. She resembled a demon who had walked out of hell. So beautiful, so brilliant, but also so frightening, allowing people's hairs to stand on end. Wu Xian, who had received an order from his master, hurried over to B courtyard at this time and saw this precise scene in front of his eyes. Even Wu Xian, whose heart was cold and had seen the whole world, held his breath from intimidation. Previously, Wu Xian wasn't fond of Hushi. Although Hushi saved Master's life, it was also because Hushi got hurt that Master got caught up in that crisis. So much so that Master, in order to save her, wasted the blood essence. And most importantly, previously Master had always been cold and formidable. He never had a weakness before. But when Hushi appeared, Master suddenly had the ordinary person's 4 human emotions, 5, and a weakness. And this woman named Nalan Hushi is delicate, in such a way that it's inconvenient, causing Master to have to constantly worry over and protect her. 1. Resemble a red lotus blooming. I believe this means that the blood was spreading. 2. Dead, but wouldn't close their eyes. They died with grievances. 3. Tears of blood, a symbol of extreme suffering. 4. Yellow Springs, the underworld in Chinese mythology. 5. 4 human emotions: happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. Chapter 360. Tearing into pieces. If this continued on, one day, this weakness will become Master's fatal crisis. Therefore, Wu Xian had been scheming to secretly get rid of Hushi, this hindrance of a woman. He made sure to take pains to ensure Master wouldn't suspect anything. Wu Xian had recently just broken through nascent soul stage, and although his foundation still wasn't completely stable, but in Miluo continent, there were few people who had seen him and didn't tremble in fear. This allowed him to injure people as he wished. Yet she was merely an insignificant girl at just foundation establishment stage who, unexpectedly, caused him to feel afraid. Is this woman truly ordinary and weak? After Wu Xian entered B courtyard, This was his first thought. Soon after, he took note of the misery-filled courtyard and the bloody slaughterhouse-like scene. His complexion couldn't help but drop. Initially, before he had entered Seal Dragon Domain's secret territory, Nangongyu had told Bai Hu and him to guard Bi Courtyard's surroundings and to protect Nail and Hushi. However, later when Hushi, by an accident arising from many causes, also entered the Seal Dragon Domain's secret territory, they lost future Wangfei's Bi Courtyard. So naturally, if they had to say it, protecting it no longer held value. To add on to the fact, they received information regarding that secret. So, they quickly threw Bi Courtyard and the people inside Bi Courtyard to the back of their minds. In any event, Wu Xian never thought that this moment of ignorance would cause Hushi's servants and subordinates to be massacred. Inside Yinjing City, it's possible to be able to find Hushi's address. There were few people who didn't know that she was Hell King Manor's people and under their protection. Just who ate a bear's heart and the leopard's guts. Unexpectedly, someone dared to put their hand to Hell King Manor's future Wang Fei. At this moment, Hushi had already finished sewing together Wet Nurse Chen's body. Wu Xian walked a few steps forward. Wang Fei, this subordinate has come under Master's order to protect you. Hushi paid no attention to him. She respectfully shifted Wet Nurse Chen's body to a corner and lightly flattened out a corner of her jacket, softly saying, "Wet Nurse, wait here for a moment for me." After saying that, she no longer hesitated and stood up. Her figure disappeared from the place she originally stood at and began to carefully check every inch and corner inside Bi Courtyard. She had yet to see Shi Jia and everyone else or Shaoli. Just after she passed through the corridor and into the back garden, Hushi's eyes suddenly contracted. She only saw the back garden's floors were also filled with blood and corpses were strewn about in disorder. But these corpses, in comparison to the ones in the front yard, met an even crueler and miserable end. Some bodies had their hands chopped off, some had the bones in all four limbs of their bodies crushed, and others met the same fate as Wet Nurse Chin. They had their internal organs spilled out of a hole in their stomachs. Their intestines were purposefully taken out, and they didn't die immediately. They had to endure a slow and painful death. These people were the subordinates Hushi meticulously trained: Shi Jia, Shi Yi, Shi Bing, Shi Gui. Hushi looked at the scene in front of her eyes. Her expression was calm, as if she held no emotions. But even she didn't notice that her fist was clenched, as if she wanted to tear something to pieces. She crouched down, softly using her hand to support Shi Jia's dead body. She wanted to sew back his hands and feet that had been chopped off. But just as she supported his body, her movements stopped. Although it was very, very weak, her fingertips felt the faint pulse of a heartbeat. A bright light shone in Hushi's eyes. She didn't hesitate and quickly took out silver needles from her space. One after another, she inserted them into the holes in Shi Jia. After being completely ignored by Hushi, Wu Xian felt unsatisfied. But thinking about Bi Courtyard's miserable state, he still slowly followed behind Hushi. PFF, of course not. Our Hushi has MC plot armor. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.